the wisdom of generations of women to help you have more joy every day. The Wisdom Coalition program begins right now.
You can numb yourself in a lot of ways where you really just kind of dive in all the way, whether it's with people or things or jobs or your community.
Numbing becomes a problem when it becomes almost an addiction, when we do the numbing instead of dealing with the negative things that are going on in our lives.
The danger of numbing what we feel.
Welcome to the Wisdom Coalition program. I'm Nancy Wertine.
And I'm Kim Howie. Thanks for joining us.
We're talking today about numbing versus addiction and what's the difference between the two.
Experts say that numbing is what we do when we're trying to avoid the discomfort of our negative feelings. We typically numb with things like food and alcohol and even shopping.
An addiction, of course, is much more dangerous.
Professional comedian Liz Russo has made it her business to laugh at her addiction.
I like that we're sponsored by Highland Brewing Company. That's awesome, especially as a recovering alcoholic.
Liz talks so publicly about this issue, hoping she can take the shame away for someone else. Her struggles with addiction began with food. In 2002, she had gastric bypass surgery and lost 130 pounds, only to replace food with alcohol. In recovery since 2011, she says she knows now that she is responsible for her own health, and while she jokes about the darkest days of her life, she says she's hoping her honesty will translate into compassion.
Liz Russo joins us now. Thank you so much for being with us, Liz.
Thanks for having me.
You say that your problems with addictive behavior began with food. So when was it that you realized you had a problem?
Well, I probably didn't realize that I was using food to suppress feelings and things of that nature until later in my life. I always like to say I ate my feelings, and feelings are delicious, but it can cause detrimental results, obviously. But I went to a weight loss camp when I was a kid, and I've always struggled, with my weight. Since I got sober, I definitely noticed the parallels of using food and using alcohol in the same way. So that's really when I discovered it.
Yeah, and you've been really open with sharing your story with other women and in public, and you're trying to do that to help other people. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, yeah. I really feel that sharing my story can really ignite the story in other people, and for them not to feel alone when they're struggling with something. I mean, we're all struggling with something, whether it's addiction or something else. And it's nothing to be ashamed of. Addiction is a disease, and we all have some sort of unhealthy behavior or something we're trying to do better in our life about. And I think when I share my story, it creates empathy and hopefully laughter as well. But I think it's a good form of communication to use humor to deal with issues. And I'm very happy to be very public about my recovery because I'm very proud of that.
Well, and I think you're right. By getting people to laugh about it, then it opens that dialogue. And, we're talking about this subject of numbing versus addiction. And while they're different, if we're numbing, we're not feeling our feelings to a degree, right? So what would you say about the difference between those two things and the dangers of just, quote, plain numbing?
Well, I would say numbing is the desired result of using some sort of substance or an action, whether it be shopping or alcohol or whatever it is. And it's just a very artificial response, so you're not dealing with your feelings, you're avoiding them, you're running, you're hiding, you're putting it off. It can result in addiction, especially prolonged use. But when you're not dealing with your problems, they don't go away. So it's really the only thing you can do is to deal with your pain and then hopefully transform that, into some sort of healing and wisdom.
Yeah, and you said that it was after your gastric bypass surgery that you found alcohol, and you call that addiction transference. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely, and I think that's where the parallels started to happen. I never realized that I used food for a desired result other than, I'm hungry, or this feels good, or, something of that nature. When I lost the 130 pounds, I had a whole set of other emotions and things to deal with in my life, and I didn't know how to cope with life on life's terms in that way, and so I switched from, you know, using food to help me with my feelings, and I used alcohol instead, and that completely anesthetized, you know, everything. So that's sort of the numbing factor of that.
So what do you do now when you have bad feelings? Because, right, we're still going to have bad things go wrong in our lives and feel badly.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think the best thing to do is to actually feel your feelings. So I can't use alcohol anymore. You know, I'm sober 6 years, and now I have to sit there and feel my feelings, and it can be unpleasant. But that's really the fastest way through them. You know, when even something's hurtful or something feels unbearable, it really is. You can really get through it. It's sort of like a wave on the ocean. If you're running from the wave, it may break on you. And so you're actually compounding the problem. If you just go through the wave, it'll be over.
And the good thing is if you're feeling the bad, then you're feeling the good also.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? You're feeling all the feelings.
Feeling all the feelings,
Thank
all
you.
of them.
Thank you so much for being with us, Liz. And you'll be joining us later in the show.
Yes, thank you very much.
But first, some more reflections on this topic from our well of wisdom.
I have the opportunity to be part of a group of women that are in addiction in a group, and I see the pain, and I see the women that are trying to get away from it.
Addiction for Sean, I believe, just about drove him crazy. He did not want it. Nobody wants to be an addict.
Welcome back. The Surgeon General says that 1 in 7 Americans will experience a problem with alcohol or drugs in their lifetime, and that some 20 million people have substance abuse disorders. To continue the conversation now, Paige Roth joins us. She is an addiction recovery liaison and a certified recovery specialist, helping people who come into the ER in crisis to get treatment. And you're also a recovering addict yourself. So thank you so much, Paige, for being with us.
You're welcome.
And Paige, you talk to women in your recovery program all the time about the importance of being aware of their numbing behaviors. Why is that so important?
Well, numbing behaviors can become very dangerous. Anything that we do in excess is not good for us. Overeating, gambling, all those kinds of addictions or things we do to numb our feelings so we don't have to feel, you know, anxious or whatever it is, a bad day at work. You know, anything in excess eventually can be dangerous.
So what would you say then is the difference between numbing behaviors that many of us do and an addiction?
Well, it's actually, this is a little controversial. The American Psychiatric Association, when they rewrote their diagnostic manual this past time in 2013, they have started to now, because of research, add more things into the column of a real addiction. In this past version, they have approved gambling as an addiction. And what more research is showing is that gambling, eating disorders, and substance use like alcohol or drugs, they have very similar neurobiological aspects about them. So eventually, there's going to be more and more things admitted to the diagnostic manual and recognized by the Psychiatric Association as really addictive issues.
And can numbing then lead to addiction? And how do you know when you've stepped over that line?
Most people know, and then sometimes it takes things like with alcohol, a DUI, with an eating disorder, you know, then you start to have health issues. Gambling, well then, you know, then your finances are affected. And then with the teenagers and the younger people, what's really become a problem is internet gaming. And, you know, and so with the way the culture is, things are changing, and the things on the internet are becoming very, you know, used for numbing.
You know, it is controversial, and it's also controversial, this opioid epidemic that we have in this country, right? And I know it's complicated, but in your experience with working so much in the recovery community, with having experience in recovery yourself, what do you think is at the heart of that? Why are we seeing more and more of these types of problems?
I think with the opioid in particular, that came from the drug companies, and they marketed it to doctors as a safe, Oxycontin in particular, as a safe and effective and non-addicting pain medication, and that just wasn't true. And so from 1995 till today, the amount of prescriptions that have been written have just skyrocketed, and most of the people that I see in the emergency department have begun their opioid addiction, whether it's now heroin, it's begun, I'd say 9 times out of 10, by from a prescription that they got from a doctor for maybe a sports injury. I see that a lot. A surgery that they needed, and they were given Oxycontin.
Well, we're going to speak about some solutions in just a moment, but we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with you.
And you can join the conversation online at our website, thewisdomcoalition.com. We'd love to hear from you.
We'll be right back.
It's what we do when we feel a negative emotion. And so we're all habitualized to switch away from that negative emotion. So we move to food, or we move to, even Facebook. We can numb out. If we're feeling something negative, we replace it with a different activity.
I definitely see numbing happen very frequently in friends and people I know on campus when they get incredibly stressed. And it's just, I don't have time for this, so I'm not going to deal with this problem.
Welcome back. Paige and Liz join us now to continue the conversation. And you've both spoken about the stigma surrounding issues like addiction. So how do we combat that to get people talking about it?
Well, I think for me, and I'm not sure if it's the same for you, but telling my story, being vocal, letting people know that recovery is possible, that it is a disease, and that it's treatable, that there's treatment available, that everyone struggles in life, and it's nothing to be ashamed of, because that sort of silence and that shame really keeps us sick and keeps us from going to get treatment, and and that's very sad. So I like to be vocal about my recovery for that reason, if for nothing else.
Anything to add to that, Paige?
I totally agree. That's why I'm open about my recovery. I feel if we're silent, we let other people define us. And, recovery is possible. I usually self-identify with all my patients so that they know immediately, recovery is possible. I was where they were, 12 years ago. And, treatment works, and we need to get people into treatment.
And what kind of advice do you give to people about feeling their feelings when they're uncomfortable?
Well, one of the things about numbing, or, you not only numb the bad feelings, you numb all the good feelings. So life becomes this blur, this unhealthy, unfeeling blur, and there's not any good stuff. And I tell people, recovery is not easy, especially early recovery, but it's so worth it. And if I knew years ago how great recovery was, how great a life without substances could be, I would have stopped years ago.
So give us some tactics that the two of you use when you do have the bad feelings. What do you do now?
Well, I think for me, I always say that I live in recovery. I'm not recovered, but I live in recovery. So it's a day-to-day process. It really is just one day at a time. So, and sometimes those days are bad, but it's temporary and you can get through it. Healthy coping mechanisms definitely help. For me, a good sober support system, knowing that there are other people dealing with the same issues and talking it out, that definitely helps. I don't know, what are some other things?
I use my support system, so I know I talk. If I know I've been overeating and binging, I'll call somebody I know who has done the same thing, and we kind of commiserate, and you have that camaraderie. It helps you get through it. I also do, I'll take long walks in the woods with my dog when I know that, you know, I have this angst building up.
Yeah. Personal care, you know, any
That's what I
kind of
was thinking,
personal
like a
care,
self-care.
exercise. Self-care is very, very important. I think as women, we get so busy in our lives taking care of other people, we forget how to take care of ourselves. And I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And how about the shame that goes along with those numbing behaviors and the addiction? How do you help people with that?
Shame is a dark place.
It is.
And it really drives a lot of the problem that we see in society, because people don't want to talk about it. They don't want to reveal what's going on with them because of the stigma. Even in the medical profession, we have people who still don't really believe addiction is a disease, and look at patients in a different way. But we just talk about it. I just talk about it. You know, there's nothing to be ashamed of. If I had cancer, I wouldn't be ashamed of having cancer or diabetes or heart disease.
Yeah. And I think there's a difference between guilt and shame. When you feel guilty about something, you can reflect on that and maybe change, you know, your decisions going forward. You can make those adjustments. But shame really keeps you in a dark place, like you said. And, you know, it grows with that silence, and it grows with that fear of judgment. And I really feel like women especially deal with that because we're worried of that judgment, feeling like a bad mother, feeling like, you know, a bad person inherently. And it keeps us from hoping or feeling that we can ever make a change to get better, that we're just inherently bad. And the thing is, with addiction, you're not a bad person, you're a sick person. And recovery is possible and treatment is out there. And it's nothing to be ashamed of, and we're proof positive of that, so it's great.
Yeah, such great important points that you're making. So thank you so much to both of you for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we'll see you soon in the kitchen.
At this point in my life, I have discovered that whatever issue you're dealing with, avoiding it, numbing, whatever salve you're trying to put on it, doesn't make it go away.
Welcome back. For our kitchen segment today, we thought we'd take a look at how to prepare for a gathering of family and friends.
And we want to make sure that we have time to really connect with our guests.
We do. So how do we put together something as beautiful as this? We have two awesome guests to tell us about all of this. Stephanie Stevens, owner of Bellgate Farm, and Maureen Cospia of Cospia Farms. Thank you so much, ladies, for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
You know, Stephanie, you do such a great job with decorating at Bellgate, and I know that Cospia Farms, you have you specialize in creating beautiful outdoor living areas. So the two of you have worked your magic here, and we want to know the insider tips, okay? So tell us a little bit about how you put all this together.
Well, I'm really glad that you had us on the show because it's actually the most frequently asked question that we get at Bellgate. How do we actually at home take what we've seen at Bellgate in your buffet and apply it in real life? And it's very actually simple to do. So because I own Bellgate Farm and I have access to all of the tools I need at a venue in order to entertain, I have a lot of these great bowls and plates.
Yeah, you
but
do.
Even if you just take a key piece that maybe your grandmother gave you or your husband's wife gave you, you know, your husband's mother gave you, something that means something to you, and put that on the display, then you can put anything else around it and it really works.
Yeah, I love that idea because you've talked to me about that before, and I know you said here on the display you have something from your daughter.
I do. I do. So I always, on my displays, I love to bring in my daughter, so I have a piece of artwork over here. And I also have a boar for my father, my late father, and for my mother, I have a shot glass that is from her family that was back from Mount Carmel when they owned a wine store. So I always like to bring them to the party as well.
That's awesome.
And one of the things that I love about a buffet is that you can create so many different types of foods. We deal with allergies now today, and so you're struggling, and everybody has a different, some we have vegetarians, we have people that like to eat meat, some that, you know, chicken or beef or whatever. And one of the things my mom said to me once is, I really don't want you to graduate from college because I just figured out what all your friends like, and so now I have to start all over. So a buffet allows you to bring in so many different types of foods, and you can also elevate them in different ways so that if there's something that maybe somebody's allergic to, you can get it away from them, or if you don't want your child to have something, you can put it further away. And a lot of these pieces I actually got at Cospia Farms, and I'd really like for Maureen to take the opportunity to kind of share some of the stories behind the pieces, because they're quite amazing and they support local businesses.
And Steffi and I, when we met, she was coming in for landscape work at Bellgate Farm, and was blown away by what we had in the store and our focus on Life is Better Local. So not only do we have all the nursery product as well as outdoor furniture, but today we have over 70 local artists and businesses that make handmade product at the store. And then we bring in local musicians as well. But some of the items here, now Stephanie owns, but she's using them in really creative ways. Obviously, she loves color. So we're seeing a lot of different color around, but things are really complementary. There's things that mean something to her, like this bell. We've used something like a sewing box and turned that into a bread basket. So we've tried to change things up, create different segments on the table, different heights, color, texture. Make it approachable for everybody.
Right. Don't be afraid to use different mediums.
Okay. So before we run out of time, because we're running out quickly, we're going to make the cheese board for you real quick. So let's work on that.
Please.
And talk to us a little bit, Stephanie, about the different heights that you said and this granite. I love that idea.
This is super fun. So one of the tools that I learned when I was just starting out and I didn't have a lot of income, I actually could go to a granite store and you can get samples of granite and things that you like. And so you take them home with you and they give you the little squares. They're about this big, so appropriately sized, and they're perfect for a piece of cheese or 2 pieces of cheese. It doesn't matter, and you can create your own cheese plate without having to purchase anything at all. And everything else that you see here is very inexpensive. I purchased these for $1 at a flea market, so you can really have these great finds and not worry about the expense of something. And the other thing I wanted to mention is don't worry about not having a big table. If you've got a small space, you can utilize various different other areas in your home for appetizers and for the dinner portion and for dessert. So don't get locked up in the fact that I don't have a big table. Don't worry about it. A small space with a small cheese plate or any of these things will do.
Thank you so much, ladies, for being with us today.
Thank you for having us both. The Wisdom Coalition means a lot to both of us. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Go on out and spread some joy today.